What started as quiet murmurs within the paddock has now erupted into a full-blown verbal firefight, and we're barely 6 races into the 2025 Formula One season. Red Bull Racing, still reeling from McLaren's dominant 1-2 finish in Miami, has gone on the offensive, slamming the FIA's decision-making process as absurd. At the center of this storm is a front-wing regulation that, according to Red Bull, should have been enforced from the very first race of the year, not conveniently rolled out mid-season, right after McLaren had built themselves a comfortable cushion. But that's just scratching the surface. Red Bull isn't just raising eyebrows over the timing. They're calling out everything, from the suspicious flex in the MCL39's wings to alleged anomalies in tire behavior, and even McLaren's uncanny efficiency in managing heat during pit stops. Whispers have surfaced about secret water sprays and thermal imaging tricks, transforming this off-track drama into a fierce chess match of strategy, suspicion, and subtext. If McLaren has indeed been dancing in a regulatory gray zone, then the real question is, why did the FIA wait until round 9 to finally act? For fans who crave the political undercurrents that define F1's most explosive moments, this video is absolutely unmissable. Hit that subscribe button, because what's coming next could flip the entire 2025 season on its head. Let's break it down. The fallout from the Miami Grand Prix didn't end with the checkered flag. In fact, it might have just begun. Red Bull Racing, once the unchallenged titan of the hybrid era and winner of 4 straight Drivers' Championships, is suddenly playing catch-up. But rather than burying themselves in internal audits, they're pointing fingers, squarely at the FIA and a resurgent McLaren team that seems to have cracked a code Red Bull can't decode. And the spark that lit this powder keg? Flexible front wings. Red Bull argues that the FIA's delay in enforcing stricter flex tests has skewed the championship unfairly. Christian Horner hasn't dropped names outright, but the tension is impossible to miss. The FIA had announced in January that enhanced flex tests would begin at the Spanish Grand Prix, a move that many teams, including Red Bull, endorsed. But for them, it came far too late. After 6 races, McLaren now holds what Red Bull sees as an artificially bloated performance edge. Joe Verstappen didn't sugarcoat it. "You enforce it from race 1 and it's fair game for everyone," he said. But now, after all these rounds, it suddenly becomes illegal? They've already cashed in on it. It's nonsense. Totally ridiculous. It's not often you hear Joe speak so bluntly to the media, which only underscores the growing unrest inside the Red Bull camp. This isn't just the sting of defeat. They're convinced the playing field hasn't been level since the lights went out in Bahrain. So what's really behind this regulatory shakeup? The FIA's Technical Directive TDL-18 is essentially a response to the way modern front-wing designs have been pushing the current flexibility thresholds to their limits. According to the sport's governing body, this phased rollout gives teams time to adjust without being forced to scrap expensive components mid-season. But in reality, it's created a window, however brief, for clever teams to exploit legal loopholes before enforcement truly kicks in. And Red Bull is convinced McLaren seized that opportunity with both hands. According to paddock insiders, suspicions about the MCL39 didn't just appear overnight. They've been simmering since the pre-season testing phase. Red Bull's engineering team allegedly noticed something curious: subtle deflections in McLaren's front wing structure under aerodynamic load. At high speeds, the wing appeared to flatten out, boosting straight-line speed, while still delivering hefty downforce through corners, a balance that, ironically, Red Bull once mastered themselves. But the tables have turned. And this isn't just about aerodynamics anymore. In Miami, McLaren didn't just win, they humiliated the field. Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris crossed the line a staggering 30 seconds ahead of George Russell, with barely a challenge from anyone in the top 10. This wasn't the kind of race where you'd expect such a runaway result. So how did McLaren pull it off? The answer, increasingly, appears to lie in tire management. With the searing track temperatures in Miami pushing everyone to the brink, most teams were battling rear tire degradation. But McLaren, their MCL39 looked almost bulletproof. In conditions that should have dragged everyone back into the midfield, they soared. That's where the controversy deepens. Red Bull, ever the analytical hawks and never shy to question rivals' tactics, began deploying thermal imaging during pit stops to monitor McLaren's tire behavior. Whatever they spotted, or think they spotted, raised enough eyebrows to stir serious debate. Whispers began circulating that McLaren may be using trace amounts of water during stops, misting their tires just enough to cool the surface and boost grip, all while staying within the ambiguous boundaries of FIA cooling rules. And when pressed for comment, McLaren CEO Zak Brown, never one to shy away from stirring the pot, responded with trademark sarcasm, brushing off the allegations with a smirk. "Maybe it's just the water bottles," Zak Brown said, mocking the conspiracy theories swirling around McLaren's pit lane tactics. But then, in a move that raised eyebrows, he added a challenge of his own. If any team believes McLaren is bending the rules, file a formal protest. Bring your evidence to the table. Otherwise, stop whining. The implication was clear. Red Bull's accusations might be less about uncovering a real breach of the rulebook and more about getting inside McLaren's head, rattling them, unsettling their rhythm. From Red Bull's point of view, however, remaining silent could mean falling behind a team operating in a realm no one else fully grasps. The reality might be far less scandalous than water sprays or trickery. McLaren's tire advantage could simply stem from superior suspension design, more precise thermal modeling, or a smarter on-track strategy. After the Miami Grand Prix, Oscar Piastri hinted that the car truly comes alive in high-heat environments and slower corner sequences, conditions where tire degradation becomes a critical factor. In his own words, "That's probably been one of our strong points so far this year." That kind of insight hints at a far more worrying scenario for Red Bull. McLaren's edge may not come from skirting regulations, but from mastering a performance variable that's notoriously hard to quantify. And if that's the case, the problem for Red Bull is even deeper than they think, because while you can patch a regulatory loophole, you can't plug a knowledge gap. George Russell, who currently splits Verstappen and Piastri in the standings, echoed this belief. While Mercedes is still clawing its way back into form, Russell's observations carry weight. "Barcelona will be interesting because of the new rule change," he said. But McLaren's secret is in the tires, not in anything that'll be affected by the updated front wing checks. If Russell is right, the upcoming changes to the wing regulations might only deliver marginal effects. The real battleground will remain where it's always been, in tire comprehension and control. But Red Bull's anxiety goes beyond individual races. They're worried about losing momentum. In 2022 and 2023, they set the gold standard. In 2024, they held onto it. But now, with a new powerhouse rising from Woking and Mercedes quietly rebuilding in the shadows, Red Bull's grip on the top looks shakier than it has in years. And with the sweeping 2026 regulation reset looming, any competitive ground lost in 2025 could spiral dramatically out of control. Christian Horner acknowledged this tension in Miami, saying, "McLaren clearly have the standout car. They've got the kind of edge we had a few years ago, and they're managing temperatures exceptionally well." Coming from him, those words mean something. They point not to a passing hot streak, but to a structural shift in competitive order. McLaren isn't just beating Red Bull on stopwatch. They're rewriting the manual. And that leaves Red Bull facing a pivotal fork in the road. Do they double down on solving the 2025 tire puzzle to catch McLaren in this championship fight? Or do they pivot early, diverting resources toward 2020's excess blank slate? That's the strategic conundrum. And meanwhile, McLaren now leads both the drivers' and constructors' standings. With Oscar Piastri beginning to look like a legitimate title contender, Red Bull may soon be forced to make short-term moves that could sabotage long-term goals. This is where the story gets really intriguing. Because if McLaren's success is the product of clever interpretation and genuine engineering brilliance, then Red Bull's not just battling a rival team. They're facing the sport's next evolutionary leap. The disruptors are being disrupted. And for a reigning champion, That shift in power dynamics is a bitter pill to swallow. All eyes will now turn to the Spanish Grand Prix. If McLaren's performance suddenly dips under the new front-wing testing regime, Red Bull's suspicions will gain some validation. But if they remain dominant, the spotlight will swing back to tire mastery, and whispers of rule-bending might slowly morph into respect for a team that simply outthought, outbuilt, and outdrove the rest. Let us know in the comments, because this title fight is getting hotter both on and off the track.